Whoa, is that a Curious Light Rift room in the outdoors? Well, yeah, it is, but it's not in the game as of now. You see, with the release of the Outdoors update indoors, we were introduced to the feature of rift rooms in the hotel and mines. For a while now, players have been asking for a way to access their rifts midway through playthroughs rather than at the very beginning or very end. And in this update, the developers delivered on that request. Throughout your runs, you can come across rift rooms, rare and special rooms that upon unlocking with a skeleton key, reveal a rift. Now, given how heavily Guiding Light themed these rift rooms are, I asked the question, what if Curious Light had them as well? So I took it upon myself to create 3 entirely unique rift rooms, all themed around Curious Light, and I'll be showing all of them to you here in this video. Keep in mind though that all of these are just concepts, and not anything is in the actual game. I just did this for fun. We have got a lot to discuss today, so with all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so the first hurdle I encountered when designing the Curious Light Rift rooms was where was I gonna put them? There is no way to get a skeleton key in the back door, and the rooms have no side rooms for the rift rooms to be present in. This just left me with the newly released outdoor subfloor, and fortunately this area has the perfect structure to put these rare rooms in. Throughout the subfloor you can find small shelters called crypts, which require an iron key to access and are guaranteed to spawn with a single lotus petal inside. Seeing the opportunity in front of me, I decided to make it so rarely, instead of crypts holding a lotus petal, they would become Curious Light Rift rooms and require a skeleton key to be accessed, rather than a normal iron key. Afterwards, players will still have 1 durability left on their skeleton key even after entering the outdoors, so this gives them a place to use it. Now, the Guiding Light Rift rooms in-game are unique in the sense that they reference other locations in-game. For example, in the hotel you can find an abandoned chef shop as a rift room, and in the mines you can find a part of the nest. I wanted to do something similar with these Curious Light Rift rooms, and that brings us to the first one I created. This is the Infirmary crypt, the first of 3 Curious Light Rift rooms. Now, despite being called a rift room, you'll notice how there is no rift inside of it, and I did this for a couple reasons. For one, I wanted to save an outdoors rift for something I'll mention later, and 2, the rift takes up a majority of the small space in a crypt, so removing it entirely and replacing it with something else would allow for more of the room to be visually appealing. Back on track though, the Infirmary crypt, as its name suggests, mimics the infirmary room in the hotel. Here, players can access a green herb, just like in the normal infirmary, and it's possible some extra items could be present in the cabinet the herb is resting on, such as lots of gold, or to stay on point with the healing items theme, aloe, which is a newly released healing item. Now, although the green herb is practically useless in the outdoors itself, given how all entities here instantly kill you, unlocking this rift room and using the herb could be practically useful in the mines if you complete the subfloor with the status effect in tow. Moving on though, the next Curious Light Rift room I created is definitely one of my favorites, and that's because it's the Lotus crypt. Upon unlocking this room, you'll be met with an interior covered in vegetation, all illuminated by a jar of fireflies. The centerpiece of the room though is a small lotus flower perched on top of a curved vine, which can be picked up and used by players. Now, out of all the secret rooms I created, this one would likely be the rarest to spawn, and that is for a couple of reasons. For one, it wouldn't completely invalidate the previous method of obtaining lotus flowers by gathering 8 lotus petals and giving them to Grampy, as due to the room's rarity, it's unlikely to spawn at all in any given run. Additionally, it would still retain the challenging aspect of trying to obtain a lotus flower using the traditional method, as most of the time players would still have to do that instead of getting very lucky by finding one of these rooms. Now, due to those reasons I mentioned, you might be asking why I even created this room, if its purpose is just to never be found. And that's because its existence is meant to help balance out instances when the traditional lotus flower obtainment method fails at the hands of the game. Although most of the time players are able to gain 8 lotus petals prior to meeting Grampy, I remember one round I played where even though I looted every single container and obtained every single visible and crypt-locked petal, I only managed to get 7 petals before meeting Grampy. This event is unlikely to occur, don't get me wrong, but I did feel robbed as all the effort went into completing the subfloor was flushed down the toilet because I wasn't lucky enough to find an 8th petal. So to combat rare situations like this, where players physically can't obtain the required 8 petals to create a lotus flower, this rare Lotus crypt room could provide a way for players to obtain the Lotus flower without getting every single petal. Additionally, given how all of these Curious Light Rift rooms require a skeleton key to access, players can only open them if they entered the subfloor through the hotel, which I feel is more than enough effort to warrant a free Lotus. at least compared to players who access the subfloor through the lobby and consequently have no chance at all of receiving a skeleton key. Lastly though, the final rare room I've created for this video is the Vacuum Crypt, and this is the rift room which actually contains a rift. Upon unlocking its door, you'll be met with a familiar sight, a broken wooden bridge floating across a dark abyss, with the rift located at its end. In case you couldn't tell, this room is meant to mimic the appearance of A1000, the final room of the room's subfloor. I feel this is fitting given how both the rooms and the outdoors are controlled by curious light, and it makes sense from a lore perspective for the vacuum to be inside just this small structure, as the world of doors is constantly changing and the laws of elevation and physics just don't exist here. Unlike the Infirmary crypt, which houses a green herb, or the Lotus crypt, which houses a lotus flower, the Vacuum crypt, as I've said, houses a rift, ones players can use to store any items they found throughout the outdoors. You see, something I noticed with the outdoors is once you complete it, you essentially have to complete the entirety of the mines just to put away any items exclusive in it, such as Aloe. Now, of course, you can get lucky with getting a mine's rift room spawn, but those are quite rare, so hopefully to increase the odds of players accessing a rift prior to completing the mines, one can spawn in the Vacuum Crypt rare room in the outdoors. Now, although these are just concepts for rare rooms in the outdoors, I feel a lot more could be added to them to warrant players to actually use them. I've already discussed how the Infirmary room could potentially have guaranteed LO spawns inside of it so players are more incentivized to unlock the skeleton door, but the other rift rooms could have this as well. For example, in the Lotus crypt, what if shears could spawn? And in the Vacuum crypt, what if a couple of vials of starlight could appear on the bridge or just floating in the air? These extra rewards for opening rift rooms are something I wish existed in the official rift rooms as well. The cafe and abandoned Jeff shop rooms already have unique items obtainable through accessing them, but all the others don't. What if the electrical rift room had a multi-tool players could obtain from it? And what if the Grumble Nest room had a bulk light? Things like these incentivize players to not only utilize the rift rooms for features other than the rifts, but it also makes them feel like they have some quality or purpose if you aren't going to use them for their rifts. So, to summarize, I've created 3 rare Curious Light rift rooms for the outdoors which have a rare chance of replacing Lotus Petal crypts. The first is the Infirmary crypt, which mimics the design of the Infirmary room from the hotel. Inside, players can find a green herb as well as some aloe in the container. The second is the Lotus crypt, which houses a usable lotus flower inside. It could be made to contain a pair of shears to add a little more incentive for players to actually open it, but given how powerful the Lotus is already, it isn't a requirement. Lastly, the final rare room I created is the Vacuum Crypt, which mimics the design of A1000, the final room of the room's subfloor. This one, like a traditional rift room, just contains a normal rift at the end of the bridge, but it could also be made to house 2 or so vials of starlight, so players who don't need a rift still get some use out of the room. Anyways, with all of that being said, let me know in the comments what you think of these new rare rooms I created, as well as what you think could be changed about them to be more balanced. So, with all of that being said, thank you all for watching and I hope you enjoyed.